I've been building a software company for the past 3 years, and about a year and a bit, one of my clients offered me a job offer it was a 6-figure offer. And at the time, that offer was more than, what I was basically taking on from the agency. And it was very tempting. It was something that I eventually turned down, and I decided to focus on the company. And, at the end of that year, I honestly would have made more money having taken the job versus not having taken the job. But today, that's not the case anymore, and I'm very glad that I stuck to my decision. And I wanted to explain some reflections on that for people who basically are curious about building a business and things like that. But crucially, for those who want to do things, it's worth pointing out that sometimes you have to say no to the immediate term, like the short-term benefit, to say yes to the longer-term thing. And that's something that I think is very hard at the start because you don't have the track record that says that is a good decision. And I'll explain more about that in a second. But for the record, I get this 6-figure job offer, which is gives me more take home than I was doing for my own company, gives me less stress. And bear in mind, when you're building something and things aren't going the way that you want, it really doesn't feel great. And a lot of people say, surround yourself with ambitious people and all that. And I've consistently been in those kinds of circles, and that's great. But the downside of that is when you're trying to stick to something and things suck, you are surrounded by the highlight reel of people who, are ambitious and doing things. And so very quickly, it's easy to compare yourself and kind of feel like, I'm not really doing it. And that makes you, that's a very discouraging feeling. And one of the things that also humans hate the most, as a species, plenty of studies, uncertainty. People hate uncertainty. There were Domino's fixed a huge issue with complaints from deliveries by just adding the 5-step order process or whatever. Humans hate uncertainty. Just knowing where the thing is or where it's coming or whatever, just having that information, people are willing to wait more. People would rather wait more knowing where the driver is coming rather than waiting less but not knowing where things are. It is a huge thing for us, not knowing what's going on. It causes us a lot of anxiety. And that is something you face constantly in business. And especially when you start, that's particularly hard because not only you haven't faced it as much before. And so it's your first time dealing with this much uncertainty all the time. That sucks. Secondly, you don't have a track record of decisions where you've said no to the short-term benefit, yes to the long-term thing. You don't have a huge track record of those kinds of decisions in business. And that overall just creates a lot of anxiety. And it's very hard. I take a lot of comfort in the fact that it doesn't really get any harder than the start. You expend the most energy getting out of inertia, moving, getting off the ground is where you expend the most energy. If you think about a rocket ship, where you have to spend the highest, create the most energy is to get the rocket moving off the ground and accelerating upward. It is the hardest part. And that decision was probably one of the ones that has stuck out to me because in the moment, to most people, it might seem like a pretty bad one because if I tell you the conditions in which I did it in, it doesn't seem great. And I was very confident that a few months later, I'd be able to surpass the income that job would otherwise give me. But a few months after, I didn't. It took me longer than, just 2, 3, 4 months, right? And not reaching that goal is further discouraging. And, you add that in with kind of seeing other people do maybe what you'd like to do, whatever. The internet is great at showing highlight reels. And so it's great for views and clicks, but it does get you to compare things. But consistently, the times that I have made the most progress in anything that I've wanted is when I have made the decision to just stick to my own lane and not look at the lane next door, whatever it is, because switching lanes has a really high cost. And just sticking to your own lane, just doing your thing, has consistently yielded some of the highest return on investment decisions ever in my lifetime. Just stop looking to the sides and just focus, tunnel vision kind of thing. But those decisions can be really hard to make sometimes. And sometimes, the 6-figure job offer is just one instance of these kinds of decisions, but I've made dozens of them over the course of the last 3 years building this business and whatever else. Those create a lot of difficulty, especially when you are uncertain. When you're 4 months after that, we're saying no and things aren't working out, you're uncertain. Was that a good decision? Was it really worth it? It's not really working out. Was it worth it? That doubt, that seed of doubt creates so much anxiety and so much stress. That is one of the hardest parts of business. That is why it's hard. But that's the point, right? That's kind of the entire premise under which people say, oh, business is hard. It's not because it's physically difficult to do. It is because the mental burden that uncertainty creates is high and it grows as your business grows. But one of these things that really helps, and it's the reason why I think the start is the hardest part, is that over time you get reinforced with these decisions. Because I made that decision. It didn't work out at the time. As in, it was kind of detrimental in the short term, but beneficial in the long term. And now I see that. And there's other decisions like that. And so the next time I'm faced with something when I want to stick to my own lane, I have more decisions to look back on and say, that worked, that sucked, but that worked, that sucked, but that worked, that sucked, but that worked. So this one's probably going to suck now, but it'll work later. And so like when you have a longer track record, it's a hell of a lot easier. When you don't have that firsthand experience, it's a lot harder. Like there's a lot of these kinds of secondhand stories online, and that's the only thing you have to go on. You don't have that firsthand experience and knowing, like having really been through that sucked and now got better. Like once you do that one time, it's a little bit easier. It's still pretty hard though. Then you do it again. Then you just keep doing it until eventually you see the thing and you know that it's going to suck, but you know that it's going to pay off. And that is when you get good at that. Like I think that's when you're able to start making really good decisions. Running a business is effectively just making better and better decisions, especially as you get more kind of leverage, which is basically like as you hire more people and things like that, like you can now allocate people's time. And so one decision of yours controls many, many hours. Before, let's say like I'm going to choose to clean my laptop for the next hour. So I'm just, my one decision affects 1 hour for it. Whereas if I now have a team of full-time employees, and if I say, listen team, today we're going to all clean our laptops for 8 hours. That's not, let's say I run a team of 3 people plus myself. You're talking about 32 hours based on that one decision. And so you grow and leverage, and the business is just, it's a question of like how many good decisions can you make in a row. As you get better at making those, things start to move forward. That punt's a little bit tangential to the original one, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I rejected that job offer and I wanted to focus on things. And I thought at the time it was a really good idea, and I was super confident in that. And then, a couple months after, things weren't going the way that I wanted, and that drove a lot of anxiety in me. It really created like a lot of a sense of like, man, like, was I stupid? Am I being an idiot? Like, am I being a fool? Am I making the wrong call? Like, I don't know what I'm doing, things like that. Like, it triggered a lot of this anxiety, but I kind of stuck to it because I knew that I just wanted to stick to the thing. Like, I have this unrelenting belief in confidence that things will work out. Like I'm stubborn till the ends of the earth when I want, and I know that I can do something. And so, I just kept going with that. And lo and behold, things have worked out very well. And like having that in my catalog, in my arsenal of like previous decisions makes it so much easier to take that philosophy and apply it again. And that makes me more confident in those future decisions. That is something that it's so invaluable to have that, because it means that the next time you make that call, you know what you're doing a little bit more, but just a little bit more, and it makes you better at making those decisions, even when they seem painful upfront. If you're facing a decision like that, I would say try and go with the long-term benefit, but also it is a tightrope to walk, because if you make a decision and it sucks, and then it continues to suck for too long, at some point you have to pivot as well. Right? It's like if I go into making a newspaper company and I believe that newspapers are going to be the big thing, paper newspapers are probably not going to go big again, right? Because everything's digital nowadays. And so it's going to suck, and it's going to continue to suck, and it's not going to get any better because it's a sunset industry. And so at some point you have to kind of turn things around. And so it is a little bit of a tightrope to walk. It's not an easy thing, but it's just like you cannot be afraid of making those decisions which hurt in the short term. And when I say short term, I'm not talking a week or a month, I'm talking a few months, maybe a year. Like one of the things that's really hard is, especially if you're in a circle full of like accomplished people, you're in this thing for a year and things aren't working out, and you're not making that, money that you wanted to. And it's like you're stressed, and you don't really have the results to show for it. And that sucks. Like, it really does suck. It's just, it feels awful. And I say this also, especially if you are somebody who was known for doing cool things, and like, it feels like you took a step back. But sometimes you need to sit through that, and you need to ignore that feeling and just continue through it and just trudge. Like, go through the motions. Just do it for the sake of doing it. Just keep doing it. And eventually things start to work out. But when you're in that moment, that's the part that sucks. That's what, when people say business is hard, it's not the physical actions, it's that. And I think that's one of the also most valuable parts of business, is kind of learning to make those decisions, to stick to things. But anyway, leave comments and questions and thoughts if you have any below, because I do answer those and as much as I can, and try and get video ideas from those. But yeah, if you do have a decision like that to make, just don't be afraid. And if it feels like things suck right now because you're sticking to doing something, like, you're probably on the right path. I think that is a consistent theme across high-performing individuals or companies. It's being willing to, stick to your own lane, and if necessary, make unpopular decisions.